Alright. I'm bringing this Council of Inquiry to order. Fleet Admiral Feltham as chair, adjudicated by Admirals Colban and Delphin. Feltham rumbled at the room. As he began to speak, everyone present stiffened into attention, listening attentively, as he finished the statement, gesturing with huge paws at the two other admirals seated each side of him. This board has been convened to uncover the facts related to the Sol incident. This is not a criminal investigation, but any evidence gathered here today will be available to a court-martial should it be necessary. He left the statement hanging as he removed his glasses and leant forward slightly, continuing. As you all know, the loss of an Empire invasion fleet is a serious matter, and it is not my intention to leave any stone unturned. Fleet Captain Gilmore, please take the stand, he continued, reading from a pad. He gestured for the fleet captain to step forward. You are Fleet Captain Gilmore, service number H458619G, correct? Admiral Copland asked Gilmore, examining the captain as he answered in the affirmative, taking note of the air of complete dejection that seemed to emanate from the man. We entered the system as per standard operational deployment, way out in the Ort. When we woke, it was immediately clear the local species was more advanced than our scouts and probes had detected. The spectrum was awash with electromagnetic noise from their single inhabited planet. We could detect a profusion of satellites in orbit. It was surprising as we expected beings living in caves using stone tools, but they had made some significant leaps since our probes passed through the system. At first it was not a concern, however, as our Marine commander assured us his forces could overwhelm the locals when the time came. But for the immediate future, we began deploying the mining platforms, gas rigs, automated factories, and all the other machinery needed to begin construction of the gate, the fleet captain said, as the room quietened and all in attendance began to listen in earnest. Our scientists soon figured out what they were blasting into space in terms of electromagnetics, and we found it was almost entirely communication and entertainment related, Captain Gilmore continued. They have many languages, and from what we could discern from their broadcast, no central government, rather a series of states existing uneasily with each other, with warfare being a common way to resolve their issues. Captain Gilmore paused, clearly uncertain how to proceed. Please continue, Captain, Admiral Delphin coaxed, his sucker tentacles beginning to writhe in the way that signalled impatience among his species. The captain glanced at the Admiral, then drawing himself straighter, he complied. Then we made a strategic error. The scientific team placed a low-orbit spy sat over their homeworld. The science team never dreamed it could be detected or intercepted. The native species actually launched a manned orbital ship and recovered it. It looked like an Atmo craft with huge doors running along the top, and they grabbed the spy sat and glided without power back to their planet. Can you believe it? Captain Gilmore looked skyward, his own disbelief betrayed in a slight quiver to his voice. Once that happened, things changed, he continued. They started searching for us, using whatever telescopes they had. We saw them launching probe after probe towards the outer system. That's where we considered any threat to come from. Maybe a missile or two disguised as a probe if they spotted our ships so far away. But we really didn't take into account how they use the technology they have. He paused, looking briefly around the room, then continued. We were already doomed without even knowing it. There was an audible gasp at Gilmore's statement, the beings in the audience gallery starting to shift uneasily as the impact of his words sank in. Captain Gilmore ploughed on regardless. They examined everything they could about the spy sat, then did something astounding. Using a global interconnected communication system, they made everything available to the entire population of the planet, with a plea to help crack the spy sat's encryption. We actually laughed at that. His head slouched forward, the shame in his own words clearly evident in his tone, stance and overall demeanour. This internet system they used cracked the encryption in less than 9 hours, Gilmore further explained, before being interrupted by Admiral Feltham, angrily interjecting. That's impossible, he roared at the flinching captain. I'm sorry, sir, the captain shakily replied. It's true. They applied an unknown technique called weaponized autism via something called 4chan, and in an astonishingly short time they had complete access to our entire comms net, and we didn't even know it. They spent months learning our code, reading our archives, understanding who we were and how we were going to slaughter them all when we got round to strip mining their homeworld. They were not happy at all. At this time we didn't even consider them to be a threat. I realize now that's exactly what they wanted us to think. You have to understand all the time this was happening, they were making a big show of trying to communicate, flashing light displays with sounds, multiple messages of peace and love. But it was all a show. If I had only acted, he corrected himself, then we would have prevented what was to follow from ever happening. But in my arrogance and hubris, I ignored them and continued to construct their gate and many other installations throughout their system. The captain paused, reaching for a drinking bulb and taking a sip as if steeling himself for the next part. Once the gate was complete, we decided to unleash our marine forces and silence the airways of their constant babble, and that's when we realized just how serious things were. By this time, they had infiltrated our systems to such a degree, they were reading our intel and actively changing intel reports. Our commanders made the choices they wanted us to make. We landed where they wanted us to land, and in the space of 2 hours, all our forces were lost. They had prepared the ground, so what looked like a busy city was an armed death trap, with battalions of troops and equipment hidden in underground bunkers. Our forces landed, disembarked, moved into the city, and then all their equipment tied to the net shut down. Personal shield generators, communications, even our battle drones and dropships. Our marines were swarmed, slaughtered or captured. 2 hours. It happened that fast. Admiral Feltram was about to interrupt and ask more detail, but stated poor, and decided to listen to the whole story before diving into the detail. Things took another turn for the worse when 13 of our automated factories seemed to go offline as the invasion debacle was unfolding. A low priority was given to the event, and it was almost ignored as we reeled in shock at what had transpired to our ground forces. But a ship was sent to investigate, only to find they had been in control of the factories for weeks, and in that time had repurposed them to build our own ships for use against us. Thousands of them. Initially we thought it comical. What experience do these beings have with space combat? The captain questioned, shaking his head sadly. Our fleet formed up and we attacked. That's when we found out they had used this internet thing again, and another weapon they possessed made itself known. It turns out they have a form of entertainment where players can control simulated ships and fleets. We suddenly found ourselves facing extremely experienced commanders who were used to engaging in battles with thousands of ships in each fleet. They targeted command ships and signal relay vessels first in every engagement, effectively slicing the head off the proverbial snake before the battles even began in earnest. They called them Eve players, and they were lethal in the last ship actions that took place. They were backed up by another player weapon called the Elite Grandpa. These lone wolf lunatics would come at you like a nightmare with sometimes thousands of hours of something called in-headset VR experience. They openly bragged about it in unsecure comms channels. They were able to target the shields, engines, weapon systems, and sensor clusters of our capital ships with seemingly ease, leaving them to be wiped out by the larger Eve player fleets, before moving behind our lines and butchering our support ships. Gilmore paused, looking like he was going to vomit with the distaste of his own testimony. Our fleet was shredded, he stated flatly. Visibly shaking now, the captain stopped, and looked like he just wanted to run and hide. Go on, Admiral Delphin said softly, tentacles stock still, eye clusters fixed on the captain. The captain drew in his breath, making a sobbing sound completely unbecoming of a fleet captain of the Empire, before continuing. That's when I gave the order for a general retreat through the gate. He paused again, his eyes seeking contact with the eyes of each admiral in turn, as he stated very clearly. The heavy corvette Hand Tretter, under the command of Captain Aran Trevelyan, rammed the gate and destroyed it once the general retreat was executed. We have full confirmation of this from both the signal drone Trevelyan launched through the gate just before impact, and the sensor feed from the gate itself. The last was said into a silence so profound, it seemed to completely absorb his words, as his shoulders sagged. The moment dragged on, the shock of what had been said holding everyone's tongue hostage, before Admiral Coblan cleared his throat and asked, Do you have anything else to add? The captain didn't look up, he just intoned, Yes, sir. I believe if they cannot repair the gate, they will just build a new one. Sir, the humans are coming. Of that you can be certain. The last syllable spoken drowned out, as the banshee wail of the planetary defense sirens started to roar their warning outside.